Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the 922 support tier list. So, as always, really appreciate you viewing. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy the content. Check out the rest of the offerings as well. We stream every night starting around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a friendly, very chill, welcoming community. We'd love to have you to stop by, check out a few games, ask any questions that you have. If you know some really cool, like new builds or whatever, you want to run them by me or just share them with the community, we'd always love to hear that. Okay. And I am going to release an 80 carry tier list and probably a mid lane tier list for this patch as well over the weekend. So be sure to check all that out. I did already do a video about what I think is going to be happening in the preseason. Of course, once we get more details on that next week, I'll probably do a two-part patch notes that'll be super in-depth about everything. And I'll do a more in-depth guide for Senna as well as she comes out, although we'll talk about her a little bit here in just a second as well. And to address the elephant in the room, yes, I did shave. My wife wanted some nice family pictures, so this is how we're looking for now. I know a lot of people love the beard on the channel. We might grow it back out over the wintertime, but this is what we have for now. Okay, let's talk about just some meta overview really quick, because I do think there are a couple of shifts. The patch really wasn't that significant, I think, in terms of changes. It did nerf Nautilus, was probably the most significant nerf. Slapped Blitzcrank on the wrist a little bit, but I think there have just been some slight shifts in the meta overall in terms of what's popular and what's powerful. And obviously those shifts are going to be much, much more in the preseason with all those changes. But I still think coming down the pike here that there have been a couple of shifts that have moved some priority around on a few champions that we'll talk about here in a second. But a few of those shifts are, I think hyper carry tops are drawing a lot more attention than they used to, which means you're not getting camped bottom as much. You still do get camped fairly often. The people are starting to pay more attention to the top. I think a lot of this is Worlds. You're still seeing a lot of Pantheons because he's banned all the time. Renekton is very scary. People want to shut him down pretty quickly. You've got Kale, who's very scary, still in the top lane. Even despite the nerfs this patch, I still think she's a menace. People are starting to play Ryze more. Now, I know Ryze is kind of a meme in solo queue, but I have seen several games where Ryze actually can become kind of a menace. So, all those champs that can be played top are drawing a little bit more attention up there so that people are actually not just camping bottom every single game. A lot of the time they are, but it's still giving you a bit more breathing room sometimes from the bot lane camps. And the junglers themselves are becoming a little bit less aggressive as well, so that's the next point I'll hit on. Is tank junglers are coming back. I mean, they're sort of undercover. Those are the highest win rate junglers right now. Aside from Shaco. And then we have, Mundo, Nunu, Warwick got a pretty big buff a few patches ago. People are starting to figure out that he's a lot better. Volibear still seems like a troll pick, but actually wins quite a bit in the jungle. And then Zac. I've seen Zac in a lot of games recently, and I think that he actually is quite good right now. They did buff him, and it's something that I didn't really talk about a ton, but really does end up mattering quite a bit, was his little globs give 1% extra health back, which really does add up a lot in fights. And they reverted his ult, too, which is just much easier to use, requires less team coordination. I think does more damage. So he's actually becoming pretty good in the jungle. And, I mean, you still have your usual suspects of, like Yi and Udyr and those types of champs being good in solo queue. And then, of course, at higher sort of skill brackets, you have Kha'Zix being really strong. But overall, you're not seeing as many Kanes, Rengars, stuff like that in the jungle. Kha'Zix is becoming a little bit more muted. I still think he's very, very good, but we're just not seeing him as much. So those are the win rates. Now, the pick rates are a bit of a different story. You still see the Lee, you still see the Kha'Zix and the Elise, but they're just not performing as well win rate-wise. And I think people are starting to shift a little bit away from those champs, except for Lee. I mean, everybody loves Lee. But people are shifting a little bit away from those towards things like the Zac. And then even Jarvan can be pretty tanky overall. So what that means in general is that you're not going to be under as much pressure in the early game. Typically when you're getting camped, there's some, but it's not going to be someone just going to roll up and murder you like a Xin Zhao or something level 2. Lee can do that if he lands his Q, but that's given a little bit more breathing room in the bot lane. You're also seeing a rise of more ADCs that aren't just tier ADCs. Now, the tier ADCs are so popular. Kai'Sa did get nerfed on this patch a little bit. Or actually, not Xayah. Kai'Sa got nerfed last patch. But it's starting to stick in there a little bit where you're seeing the win rate here. Ashe still has a 55% win rate despite that nerf. But then you're seeing Misfortune creep up quite a bit. We'll talk about her more in the ADC tier list. People are starting to build crit on her a bit more. And then you're seeing Jinx and Twitch creeping up there as well. So kind of these two being sort of the hyperscalers that really perform a lot better in a meta where they're going to get more peel and where they're not going to get camped mercilessly in the bot lane as much. So you're seeing those. And then you're seeing Misfortune as kind of an early game pressure support coming up to punish the tier supports more. And then, of course, Jhin has been very popular as well, where people were picking him for early pressure, Draven. So people are kind of moving a little bit off of some of these other champs. I mean, as far as win rate wise, now pick wise, you're still going to see these. You're still going to see the Kai'Sa and the Ezreal, even though they're both under 49%. But you're going to see them a lot less, I think. And outside of like those two, the rest of these are pretty decent like pressure lanes. So that's given a little bit more power back to the bot lane. If you'll notice, a few patches ago, almost nobody except for Ashe was over 52%, and now we have several champions that are starting to come up closer. You know, they're getting over 53% on numerous champions. So the ADCs are rising up a lot, and like I said, I think that the major reason for that is people are playing less hyper-aggressive junglers less often, and they're paying more attention to top lane now than they were because there are several like hard carry tops now. I mean, Garen is another one that I didn't mention who wasn't played at Worlds, but is definitely a menace in solo queue that you need to shut down early. So that's allowing some more power in the bot lane. Then you're still seeing like a lot of hard engaged supports just overall in the support meta. Although some of them are coming in a little bit on the win rate wise. So Blitzcrank's under 50 or 54%. I know that he was kind of a meme. It's like, oh, you take 10 damage off of his hook, but it does matter in some situations. You know, sometimes people walk away with 10 health or less. So it wasn't a huge nerf, but it does add up. The Nautilus nerf, now keep in mind, this is just a few days on this patch. And then the rest of this, I believe, is over the last couple of weeks. But Nautilus is coming in a little bit. I think he was about 54%. You know, taking 50 damage off his ult definitely does matter. Then you're seeing Janna, like, becoming more powerful. She's been up there for a while now. And I think Soraka with this kind of different build that I'm going to mention here in a second. I've talked about it before with the Guardian, but I'll talk about it again here in a second. She's kind of creeping up there too. So I think that Janna and Soraka are definitely getting a bit more power, and the Blitzcrank, Nautilus, and Leona are still coming in a bit. They're not as strong as they were. Now, Blitzcrank in particular is still really good against things like Soraka, like like Janna. But he's not going to be as good against things like Zac out of the jungle, or Mundo out of the jungle, right? Or like Garen, or, you know, Darius, or Renekton from the top lane. So some of these tanks coming back in are taking away some of his targets in the mid game. Although he can still be pretty strong in the early game. So, and he's just banned a lot too. He's banned 31% of the time. So Blitz is still pretty good, but he is still one-dimensional, and there are fewer and fewer targets that are going to be really strong for him. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Let me start off just by talking about Senna really quickly. Like I said, I'm going to make an entire video for her, but probably over the next couple of days, but I know people are going to want to hear about her. So I'll just mention her really quick because she is coming out tomorrow. I think she's going to be weak on release. I know a lot of people are hyping her up and saying that she's going to be like, she's like really OP and really insane. I think that her kit is really good, but I think that her numbers are potentially bad. Although I will say it is very difficult to understand her and what you're supposed to do with her, because it's like reading a novel here. There's so many different modifiers to like every aspect that we kind of take for granted with ADCs. And then all of these, like the ratios look low, but you get all kinds of bonuses up here. So I'll just run through this really quickly and just explain her. And like I said, I'll do a more in-depth guide later on. But the main things that sort of are difficult to kind of wrap your head around is she doesn't get any attack damage per level. Her attack speed is only a 0.2. This is probably the biggest thing, because it makes attack speed items like really, really bad on her in theory. You know, they had said when I did the initial sort of video about her that it was going to be a 0.68 attack range, or attack speed, which would have actually been pretty fast. This is absurdly slow. Like, Caitlyn even has like a 0.56 or something, I think, just by comparisons. This is almost a third the speed of Caitlyn's. It's a really, really slow attack animation. Like, this is like you have like a 70% cripple on you. Like, there are, if Frozen Hearts could stack, you have like 3 or 4 Frozen Hearts stacking on top of you. with this. So I haven't personally played her, and I haven't played against her just because I don't have time to play around with the PD off stream, and it just takes too long to get her on stream a lot of times. I'd have to bring in a group. Anyways, I will play her when she comes out, but I just haven't played her on the PvE yet, so... Attack speed seems really bad on her, and she does have... It doesn't... I don't know why it says 130 range, but she has 600 range to start, and she gets extra range over time. So, pretty much from what I understand, and once again, some of this could change. I could be wrong about some of this. I will do more research and do a whole guide about it. But from what I understand, your attacks, and people are saying your abilities also trigger this. So if you Q somebody, they're saying it also puts mist on you. Although, right here it says attacks. Apply mist for 4 seconds. The next mist that she collects does bonus damage equal to a relatively small amount early on in the game, and then scales up over time. Of the target's current health as bonus physical damage. And then you get one of these mists. Now these mists stack up. Now, enemy champions, large monsters, and large monsters that die near Senna spawn a mist wraith. So the thing, it has to die to get a mist wraith. An epic monster spawn 2 of these. Small minions have a chance to spawn these. Whenever you basic attack a mist wraith, you have to auto attack it or Q it to collect it. Then you gain 3 gold and you get the mist. There were some people on stream that were saying if you trigger mist off of champions with this weakened soul, then this also gives you the gold just by auto attacking and queuing champions. It doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like it's only with these wraiths, and these only spawn off of kills, assists, or large monsters, basically like Thresh Souls, that you have to auto attack to collect. Not the stuff that triggers here. So that means it's not going to generate as much gold as it would off of this. And I'm trying to think of like how often you could trigger this in the lane. You're getting 1 off of every cannon, so that's 1, pretty much guaranteed. And then off of probably just random drops off of minion waves, you're maybe getting 1 or 2 more. So we'll just say you get 3 off of minions, maybe on average, if you're there for a minute for the whole wave. And then off of champions, how many times can you trigger this? Maybe let's just say 6. I think that's pretty generous. You know, that's basically every time like a lot of your cooldowns are off, like Scorch and things like that. So maybe 6 times you can go in and trigger this on people. I guess a lot of times the way that you're going to get it is you auto attack them then Q them, which will take a bit longer. But I think getting like 1 attack in, 1 trigger of this every 10 seconds is reasonable. So 6 per minute. So you're going to end up with like 9, we'll just say 10 every minute. And that's probably optimistic. But you get 10 every minute of these mists. So that means you're going to get 10 bonus attack damage every minute that you're sitting there laning off of this. And then every 2 minutes, then you're going to gain 25 range. So after 4 minutes in the game, you should have 50 extra range and 30% critical strike. So that's pretty good. That's by the time you get to level 5 or level 6 probably. You're going to have 30% crit and 650 range. So, I mean, that's pretty legit. And then in exchange for this, though, she doesn't get any attack damage growth per level. By level 5, with most champions, you would probably only have, like, maybe 6 extra or 15 extra attack damage. I think a lot of champs get, like, 3-ish attack damage, bonus attack damage per level. So that's good. As far as, like, bonus attack damage goes, that's going to be a really good rate, because she's, what did we say, she was going to get, like, 40 or something like that over 4 minutes. So 40 versus 15 or so, that's a pretty big boost there. So that's important to keep in mind. However, her basic attack windup is only reduced by 0.6 for every 1%. That's not the same as a normal scaling, because this is 0.2. So I don't know what the windup means in terms, because it's not the same as attack speed. So it's really hard to understand like exactly what that means. I know that Callista has windup built into her kit based on her attacks, or based on her boot level. But anyways, it seems like attack speed's kind of rough on her, and because she has such a low base attack damage, then Sheen items wouldn't be that great. So like Trinity or Hi. Okay.
Mom's upstairs with Rory. She's about to take a nap.
All right. Love you. Bye. So that's just kind of awkward. And then critical strikes only deal 30% instead of 100% extra damage, which at first I was like, man, that's pretty trash. But if you really can stack this stuff this quickly, you know, if you're getting 30% crit after 4 minutes, and then by 10 minutes you might have 60% crit because you're going to be rotating around more in the mid game. You know, maybe 60% crit by that point, 10 to 15 minutes. I mean, that is a lot of free crit. So getting only like a third of the benefit out of it might be worth. Now you do get plus 16% for Infinity Edge, which actually is pretty good. Because Infinity Edge usually gives 25% against the 100% you would usually get, so it's a 25% increase. But this is like 16 out of 25% increase, so I don't know, like 64% increase, something thereabouts, rather than a 25% increase in your critical damage. So Infinity Edge, if you go ADC mode, or maybe even support mode, I don't know, actually looks like that could be really, really good on her. So that's handy. So she might just go like an Essence Reaver Infinity Edge build or something like that and just avoid attack speed. I mean, that's what I would think if you're going ADC you would get, but that might be, it's probably too expensive for support. And then you might just like stack, I don't know if you'd stack Infinity Edges or not. I don't know what exactly you would get as ADC, but anyways, every time you auto attack, you do 20% of your bonus AD as physical damage. So this includes stuff off of your passive and your big items. So you want big attack damage items with her. You want the big ticket items, the 70, the 80 gold items. That's kind of what you want. And then it gives you bonus attack speed as well. And then your Q allows you to collect those mist wraiths. It can heal you and your allies and does physical damage. The ratio looks really low, you know, the 50% here and the 40% here. However, keep in mind that at that rate we were talking about, you know, you're going to be getting a lot of extra stuff, right? Even early on, you're going to be getting, you know, 40 bonus AD, and 40% of that is going to be, I don't know, like 16 or something. I don't know the exact number, but so you're getting an extra like 16 healing there. So it does start adding up. And then you have the Last Embrace for the slow. You have the mist stuff going on. And then the Dawning Shadow. So once again, I'll do a whole guide. But I just wanted to highlight that the itemization is just really funky on her early on. And so it's hard to tell how good she's going to be. Her escapes are a little questionable. Apparently, if you get really close to somebody, you can still see her. And it's camouflage. So that means that control wards should reveal. Although it says the ally is obscured, she is camouflage. So it says they're camouflage, but they're also obscured, which are different traits. So, because one of those is like a Collie's version, but one of the, like, this is like a Twitch word. So, once again, I don't know if the wiki is screwed up or not, but as it says right there, control wards can see them. They can see Twitch, they can see Evelyn, and those champions are camouflage, not invisible. So, we'll just have to see. After she gets released, I'll test her out in the whatchamacallit, the tester thing on the client. But anyways, so I think she's going to come in a little weak just because I think she's going to be vulnerable to hard engage. I think a lot of people are not going to itemize her correctly. And she's going to be very position reliant. So I think she could be very good, especially at higher elo brackets. I just think she's going to clock in early on at probably like low 40s, high 30s win rate, I would guess. So I don't think she's going to be good for the next week. I think she will benefit from the preseason. There's an Umbral item, lethality item, that has the sweeper effect on it that like the current Dustblade has, that also has CDR on it and only costs 2,400 gold. I think that'll be huge for her. If I had to guess, I think like the Kerchise Shard items could be good on her also. So like Kerchise Shard in general, which is going to give like 60 on-hit damage. So you might take like Fleet on her and take the Kerchise Shard. And maybe eventually turn that into Stormrazor Rapid Fire. Now, yes, the attack speed's not going to be great, but that on-hit burst could be pretty handy. So I think that Fleet could be decent on her. I could see a world where maybe something like Glacial Augment, just because when you land the hit, they're going to be slowed, so you can get another hit, or you can hit them with a Q to make sure that you get those mist procs. Just the other stuff doesn't seem that great there. Although here, I mean, this stuff doesn't seem awesome either. Guess you could get Bloodline, because like the attack speed's not going to be amazing. Triumph's pretty good. I guess Overheal would be good too if you went for Bloodline. and fleet. But we'll just have to see. So I think that it could be either an Energizer type of build as support. It could be like an Athene's plus like an Ardent Sensor build, although I don't know. That's not looking as promising, so her AP ratios are so low. Or it could just be like trying to get a crit build, start with Essence Reaver and then just Infinity Edge, although it's super expensive as a support. So we'll just see. So I don't think she's going to be great right off the bat, but I do think that she will be good probably once people figure her out a little bit more. A ton of this is going to depend on how many souls she gets, or whatever they're called, mists she collects. If she can get, like I said, 10 per minute, that might be ambitious. But if she can get 10 per minute, I think that maybe like this bonus attack damage is enough to really kind of put her over the edge, and getting like the extra range and crit strike, that's really good. But if she doesn't get a lot of miss, then I think her numbers are just going to be too low. So we'll just have to see how much, in all practicality, she does get. But she does have really good regen, so if you do get Fairy Charm items, they are nice on her. So I don't know, maybe Athene's would still be good. But anyways, let's get into the main list here. So I think that Rakan is still going to be really good. I think he's still near the top. Now, Zyra did get nerfed, which does indirectly nerf him. And a lot of people don't put him at the top, but, you know, I think, now, yes, everybody is not World Championships or whatever, but he was one of the highest win rate champions, period, at Worlds, and he had a pretty high play rate. 57%, I think, was the highest among supports. I mean, Nautilus was 54% and was a little bit more popular. Gragas was mostly jungle, but sometimes support. And I think most other supports are kind of weak. Yuumi was 33%, despite all the hoopla about her, you know, being OP and pro. I know she's been nerfed a few times, but I think a lot of that was overblown. People were just annoyed by playing against her, I think, was what was going on there. Yeah, and a lot of the other stuff is just not that great. The Alistar, the Thresh, Galio was probably played, I don't know, he was played mid some too. Leona actually had a good win rate. I assume she was probably picked into Rakan. She's pretty good into Rakan, so. Anyways, I think he's solid. I always get asked, well, why is Rakan so good? I'm not going to, you know, I spend 20 minutes every tier list talking about it, so I'm not going to talk about that again as much. I'll just hit a few of the highlights and why I think that he's really strong. The main thing is he's a hard engaged support that also scales, and there's not that many other supports that do that. What do I mean by that? Some people come on stream, they're like, what do you mean by scaling? Why are enchanters so strong? Why do you always say they're the highest scaling supports? So what it basically comes down to is heals and shields work with resistances rather than against resistances. This is really important, and a lot of people don't understand exactly how powerful that is. So just as an example, if you shield somebody for 100 and you deal, someone tries to break that shield, if that person has 100 magic resist, then it would take 200 total magic damage to break a 100 shield, because the 100 magic resist is going to reduce the damage by 50%. So you're going to have to do 200 to break a 100 shield. It's just a really simple example. On the flip side, if you're a Zyra or a Brand and someone has 100 magic resist and you do 100 damage to somebody, it's only actually going to do 50 damage because that 100 is going to get reduced by 50%, thus making it 50. So if you're trying to weigh against the same champion that has 100 magic resist, if you shield them, then you're getting 200 value out of it. If you try to do damage to them, you're only getting 50 damage out of it. So healing and shielding in this very oversimplified scenario is 4 times as effective as damage is. So that's why. Now, yes, every champion's not going to have 100 magic resist, but the same applies. You know, if they have 50 magic resist, the shield is going to require a lot more damage to break that shield, versus if you try to do damage to them, then your damage is going to get reduced because you're working against resistances rather than working with resistances. So that, on the very fundamental level, is why healing and shielding is so strong. That's why there's an entire item to try to, like, nerf it tremendously. Like, it nerfs healing by 40%, right? Executioners, Morellos, and there are some champions that do that. There's a reason for that, right? Can you imagine if there was a cheap item that was like 800 gold that said amplifies damage by 40%? You know, people would lose their minds, right? Because they'd be like, oh my god, it's so strong. Well, it's this, like, that's basically what healing is, like, the anti-healing is doing against heal champs, and that has to be in the game because healing and shielding is so ridiculously powerful. But if nobody gets that item, or they don't have grievous wounds on everybody at all times on your team, then the healing and the shielding just gets out of control and is too powerful. It's usually pretty good even into grievous wounds a lot of times. That's how strong it is. Another thing is the plus healing and shielding stat itself and the way that that multiplies with your other stats in the game. So let's say, for example, that you have Rakan here, and let's just make a real simple example again, a 100 shield, okay? Or we can just do, let's do some real math here with this 140 shield, and I'll just show you, like, what this means and why Rakan is so strong. Okay, so let's say we have this 140 shield. Now, remember, you can apply this twice. So that's going to be 280 shield with an additional 1.6 AP ratio. So let's say you have 100 AP. It's not that hard to get on Rakan. You can get that with runes, plus, like, Athenes will get you pretty close. And then you can also get, like, an Ardent Sensor if you want to later on. Now, he doesn't always go AP, but he could if he wanted to. And so if you have 100 AP with a 1.6 ratio, then you'd have 100 times 1.6 is 160. Now, 160 in addition to the 280 base shield that you have, plus 280, is going to put you in at 440. Okay, and now let's say that you have 20% plus healing and shielding times 1.2. Now you've got 580 shield that you can distribute there. If you run Guardian, then the plus healing and shielding and all of your AP also gives extra shielding to Guardian. And then if they have, 100 resistances or whatever, then it's going to be times 2 to break it. So, it's going to take about 1,000 damage to account for Rakan, just having something as simple as 100 AP and then 20% healing and shielding. And that's why it can just feel impossible to kill champions when there's like a Rakan or a Janna or a Soraka or something like that around if they get to sit there and put their shields out and their healing. So and Rakan is unique with that. There are not other engaged champions that can start fights very reliably that also have this. Leona and Nautilus, they don't have this, right? Like, they can go in, they can CC people, they do some damage, which is good, but they don't do any healing or shielding. They don't scale very well with AP at all. And this is tacked onto the fact that a lot of the best items, the most cost-efficient items, are going to be the AP plus healing and shielding items. The reason those items can be so cost-efficient is because other lanes don't get them. Most of the time, the exceptions of a few problematic champions like Karma, who have been nerfed tremendously because of that. And Lulu. But, for the most part, and Ivern. Most of the plus healing and shielding champions are only in the support role. There are not many other champs in the game that are going to get those items. So you don't have to worry about poaching. This is why they can make those items very strong. So like Ardent Sensor, for example, I've got a whole video on itemization and cost efficiency. So watch that if you want more details. But you're paying 2,300 gold and you're usually getting like at least 4,000 gold worth of value off of that item because of the buff that you can put on people. It's a ludicrous amount. Even after the nerfs, it was really crazy in Season 7, but even after all the nerfs, it's still a really good item. And then you look at something like Athene's Unholy Grail, it's going to give you about 150% value. Ardent Sensor is going to give you, usually around 200% value, especially later on in the game. Something like Redemption, if you're hitting even like 2 allies in a team fight plus yourself, is going to give you like over 200% efficiency. So these are very, very efficient items versus like a really good damage item is probably going to be, maybe 110 to 120% efficiency. A lot of damage items aren't even that. They're close to like 100%. A lot of tank items aren't that. They're close to 100%. Now, something like Knight's Vow is still going to be fairly efficient. I don't know the exact numbers after all the nerfs on it. Depends on how you calculate its passive, but it's probably going to be like 130 to 150%. But these plus healing and shielding items are very efficient by themselves, and they scale really well with each other. Like, they have a lot of synergy that works very well together. So if you got like an Athene's, for example, and then you get Redemption, all of that extra mana regen that you get off of Redemption translates over into AP. So you get an extra, I think it's 30 AP off of having those two items together through their synergy, which is an extra like 600 gold value, which is almost a third of the cost of one of those items. So they're all very cheap. They're like 2,100 to 2,300 gold. You can buy them right on Curve. They have really nice, friendly components, lots of fairy charms, amp tomes, those types of things. So you have really good back timings whenever you need to go back and get wards. You're not sitting around waiting for 850 gold for a blasting wand. or like 800 gold for a chain vest. They just have really friendly back timings. They scale really well with each other, and those stats in and of themselves, AP plus healing and shielding plus really good active or passive on the same items, is just really OP, honestly. And that's why enchanters have been so good for so long. And so Rakan has that with his shield, and this is one of the best shields in the game. Janna's shield, by the way, is like a 0.7. It starts decaying after like 1 second, and decays really quickly. And his is 280. It has a 0.7 ratio, and I think it's a 210 or a 220 base on Janna. This is 280 with a 1.6 ratio. It's the same cooldown at max level 12, just like Janna's is. So that's nutty. And he can split it up amongst 2 different people. It only lasts for 3 seconds, but it doesn't decay. And it gives him basically 2 free flashes to do it. Like, it's just nuts. Like, this ability is insane, like, late game with plus healing and shielding, once you have a lot of points in this. So that's it. That's what separates him from the Nautilus and the Leona. And then on top of that, he obviously has the stuff that people know about that's obvious, right? Like his quickness allows him to move really quickly, charm a whole bunch of different people. You know, his grand entrance allows him to escape stuff, allows him to engage really well. His Q is fairly weak, but it gives you a little bit of poke in the laning phase. And then he gets a passive shield to help him through the laning phase as well. But he's mostly known for his really hard engages and his high mobility. But he also has really high scaling and really high versatility with his items. He can go tankier stuff like Zeke's or Knight's Vow, but especially if he gets ahead, you know, and he goes things like Athene's and Ardent Censer, he can be one of the highest scaling supports in the game too. So I think that Rakan is still very, very good. Now people might say, okay, well he's weak to Nautilus and Leona. It's like, sort of. You know, in the early game, yes, he can get blown up, potentially. But, you know, he can also escape from that stuff. I mean, he has like 3 different dashes. A lot of times he can get away. And if you take Guardian, plus you have your passive here, he can survive quite a bit of tomfoolery. So, yes, you know, those champions are pretty good against him. But he can also protect a lot of people from those things. You know, if Leona goes on somebody, he can go in there and throw up the Guardian Shield and charm the enemy ADC and turn stuff around fairly frequently. He can even get him a Kales if you want to cleanse off some of those things, especially like a Leona ult stun. So he doesn't usually want to get him a Kales, but he could. I mean, he's got a really good shield. Like, it's not like it's a total waste on him. So he's just super versatile. He can engage, he can peel, he scales, he can also get some defense if they run a lot of assassins. So I think he's really, really good. I think he's just kind of permanently going to be a good support champion. You know, I just don't think they're going to nerf him again very much. And he's just pretty much good in almost any meta. So right now, I think just going Guardian, Demolish, Bone Plating, Unflinching, and then Presence of Mind and Legend Tenacity. I really like Presence because it cheats the CDR system. They're changing this in the preseason, so use it while you can. But pretty much it allows you to go over the cap on the 40% CDR because it just reduces your cooldown on your ult by 10%, regardless of CDR. So if you have 40% CDR and then you get 3 assists in a fight, you basically get 70% CDR on your ult. And it's one of the only abilities that does that, in addition to like Ulti Hunter. So that's really nice. And getting the mana back is actually pretty relevant, especially early on in the game. If you start a fight and you just have a little bit of mana left, your jungler shows up, you've been in lane for a long time, you're running out of mana, then you get an assist, you get that 20% mana back, and that might just be enough for you to make, you know, do one more W to get that final kill. So it definitely can add up. As far as Unflinching goes, you know, you can go Revitalize on this. If they don't have a ton of CC, you can do Revitalize as well, and that will give your shields even bigger impact, especially if you think you might be going Redemption in the game. If you think you might go like Athene's Redemption build, which is really good, especially against AP, AoE, like AP type of team comps. And then instead of Bone Plating, if you think you're going to get poked out, Second Wind can be good, or Conditioning can be really good too. 10 minutes is a decent amount of time to wait, but especially if you're going to go for more of the armor build, if you're going to go for like a Zeke's Knight's Vow type of build, then that's even better. So you usually end up getting at least 400 gold value off of Conditioning once it triggers, and sometimes you can get up to like 600 gold. So that's really nice for keeping you tanky. And then I recommend Nomads, Mobies. Zeke's is often what you want to start with, although Athene's is definitely viable early on, just depending on the situation. If they have like a really fed AD Assassin, Knight's Vow can be good. or you can go for redemption. But usually it's some combination of these 4 items, just depending on what the situation is. You can throw in an Ardent Sensor if your ADC's doing really well and getting fed, or if you have like a Master Yi or some other Kindred, some other major auto attacker that's doing well, then that can work, especially if they don't have a lot of really high burst damage and you're not afraid of dying that much. Then something like Athene's plus Ardent can be really strong. Also, Ardent plus Zeke's can double down and put a double on-hit buff on your ADC, which can be really strong too. So there's a lot of options there, but usually it's some combination of these 4 items. Now, some people ask me, why not Frostfang? The reason is you can't really reliably proc this thing. Frostfang as Rakan in like Platinum and lower. It's because you can't count on your ADC to do like high-quality trades with you most of the time. So I'd rather just have Nomad, just give me that speed so I can roam better, ward better, try to make plays mid. And it's going to give you a lot of gold, and you scale really, really well with items. So, you know, getting that Nomad in the mid game is going to allow you to get to your second item maybe like 300 or 400 gold faster than it would with Frostfang. And you got to think to yourself, would I rather, you know, complete the second item, which is going to be really strong on Rakan, and have that guaranteed income, have those guaranteed wards by like 10 or 11 minutes, or would I rather take Frostfang and kind of roll the dice, have the opportunity to do some more damage in trades, but realistically, I'm probably going to get my wards like 3 minutes later, and in the mid game and beyond, I'm going to be 300 or 400 gold slower on my first, or on my second total item, and then probably like 500 or 600 late on my third item. So the game's probably going to be over before you get to your third item. I'd rather just have the guaranteed income, honestly. Okay, but anyways, that's Rakan. Talked about him way longer than I wanted. But hopefully I explained him in a new kind of light that doesn't get talked about in a lot of other videos. So hopefully that's good. I'm going to spend obviously most of the time talking about kind of the top tier here, and then we'll talk a bit faster about the other ones. We'll see if we can keep this to about an hour. Okay, Soraka is the next one that I want to mention here. Now I've kind of changed my mind on Soraka a little bit, and there's been a couple revelations that I've had. Now she does have a good win rate as well, but you know, one thing that I had been picking or thinking about as far as Soraka goes, is that I was a little reluctant to play her in a meta where I felt like you really had to play around mid because ADC was so weak, that because everyone was picking Kai'Sa and Ezreal, that I was trying most of last patch to just play stuff like Nautilus, Leona, Rakan, and just sit middle. But there are several champions that are really hard to gank middle. Like Zed's pretty hard to gank, Fizz is pretty hard to gank. There are several things that are kind of challenging to gank. And like I said, the meta is shifting a little bit to where more people are paying attention top lane. So you actually have a bit more, like, there's a higher chance that you might have an actual 2v2 bot lane. And I realized, you know, like this ult is actually really good at roaming. It's kind of like a Karthus ult to the sense why Karthus was so popular in the jungle, is still getting popular in the jungle, because you can basically gank without going anywhere, right? And this heal can completely turn around a lot of fights. I mean, even early on, you know, giving somebody 225 enhanced heal if they're below 40%, and then you calculate that with Revitalize, which is going to be an extra 15%, and that's with, like, no items. You know, this is going to start getting close to, like, a 300 heal. And, you know, we just talked about heals and how ridiculous they are a lot of times, right? So a 300 heal, it's going to take them 600 damage to counteract that 300 heal. I mean, if the top laner, you know, is fighting with the other top laner and it's an all-in to the death, you know, and you're able to throw up an extra 300 damage when they probably have like 900 health total, that's a 30% of their health bonus. So I just think that that is really powerful, and I was underestimating that a little bit. If you get good at sort of spotting fights and knowing when you should use your wish, if you use it frivolously on someone who's already dead, then it can be a waste. But if you learn how to use it properly and sort of like get a good read on the fight and know if you can turn it around, then Wish can be one of the most powerful roaming abilities in the whole game, just like a Karthus ult. So that's something that I was really kind of underestimating, just how much that can turn fights around in the top lane. And then also, like, I knew this was a big deal when they did this, and I think I called Soraka the number 1 or the number 2 support a while ago, when they made this change. This change to the Q self-healing that they did probably like 4 or 5 patches ago, it's just like insane healing. Like, it's actually crazy how much healing you get if you put points in your Q. So, for example, if you have, early on 3 points in Q, that gives an extra 100 heal in addition to 50% of your bonus AP. And it stacks up really quickly. It grants them this effect really fast. They changed that as well. It used to go very slowly over 5 seconds they would heal. Now it's like it feels like they get 90% of the heal over like the first second, and then it trickles off. So that's something really kind of under the hood they changed about her that doesn't show up on paper, but when you play her a bit more, you can definitely feel it. And so that makes this one of the best trading tools in the game bot lane, if you can consistently land this Star Call. And you're leveling it up, because like level 3, you're paying 50 mana to do 145 damage and heal yourself for 100 plus 50% AP. And if you heal an ally, you're healing an ally for an additional 100 plus 50% AP. So if you land one of these Star Calls, you're basically, for 50 mana, you're doing 150 damage and healing for 200 with a 1.0 AP ratio. What? Like, that's so crazy. It's so much healing in the laning phase. And then later on in the game, obviously, too, like, it goes to 140. And then every person that you touch with this gets the full, like, heal. And it lasts for 5 seconds. I'm pretty sure about this. So even if you heal somebody after 4 seconds with Star Call, after you hit them, they still get the full 5 seconds of rejuvenation. So it doesn't say the remaining rejuvenation. It gives them all of it. So that means in a fight where this gets down to a 2-second cooldown, you can trigger this twice on people a lot of times. So you're already healing them for 200 with a 0.6 ratio, but now you get to heal them twice more with the Star Call every time you do that. So that's 280 with the 1.0 ratio, in addition to healing yourself for 140 with an. So basically, like, the total amount of healing for you and the 2 allies that you healed with this in a team fight is, 420 with a 1.5 ratio. Not including the 200 that you get here. So that's, like, 620 with, like, a 2.1 ratio. Every, like, 2 seconds, potentially. Or 4 seconds, I guess, when you're getting 2 of these heals. And it's 2 of these heals, not even once. It's like 800. I mean, it just starts to get absurd when you start adding all of it up. It's just ridiculous. Like, you'll see the heals are just flying out. And it's just insane. You're just topping people off, like, 0 to full, especially if you have, like, a redemption. So, like, typically what will happen a lot of times is someone will engage on your team, your tank. You drop a redemption on them. If they're really getting bursted hard, you can wish them, which is going to burst heal them for, some insane amount, like 700, 800, and then you can, like, land a Q, Astral Infuse a couple of times, and then your redemption hits, and before you know it, you've healed somebody for, like, 1,500 to 2,000 in, like, 3 seconds or less. It's just, like, a crazy amount of healing. So the scaling on her, I think, is through the roof now. I think she's the highest scaling support. It used to be Sona, but I feel like you can just cast this so often. And with the empowered Q, it's just, like, so ludicrous how much healing you put out. I mean, just look at that number there. Like, what is 140 divided by 340? Because that's what the total is going to be. I mean, that's basically 40% plus healing and shielding that you can apply to multiple targets with an extra, like, almost 100% extra AP ratio. And it heals you on top of it, so it's like 80% extra healing. It's just nuts. It's so much healing. So in the laning phase, it's very, very good trading. Like I just said before, it's like hundreds and hundreds of healing, hundreds of damage. Whenever you land your Q, it only costs 50 mana. It's got 800 range, so it's out of, like, all auto attack ranges, and it's out of, like, a lot of ability ranges too. And it wave clears. You can do 140 damage to those back lines of minions, which can help you push a lot faster. So it's just really, really strong. You also get some bonus movement speed, which is nice in certain situations. But really, it's just the healing. It's just nuts. I mean, even if they have grievous wounds, like, it's so much. Like, okay, they have grievous wounds. You still just healed them for, like, 1,500 or something. That doesn't include any plus healing and shielding, and that doesn't include any AP. Like, just imagine what happens if you get a Mikhail's plus a redemption or something like that with this. It's just crazy. So yeah, that change made her really strong. This used to be much less healing, and it used to have a much lower AP ratio on it too. She used to do more damage with it, and her Equinox used to do more damage, but the healing was far lower than what it is now. The Wish was also bugged, so she didn't used to heal herself for the bonus 40%, and they changed that as well. So they've had several really big buffs to her. When was that anyways? Just offhand, since I've mentioned it so many times. So this was bugged until 9.17, so still fairly recently. And then 9.15 was when they changed this. They actually increased the damage again. Okay, so it has been a little while where they did the 9.9, 9.10, where there's like a million different changes and buffs to her. And she gets extra movement speed whenever she hits it. But I think the time is right now because people are starting to play more, bringing in some more tanks. Like I mentioned, they're chilling on the bot lane camp. It still happens, but not nearly as much as it used to. And I think this build with Guardian, I think is actually quite good. So when you take Guardian plus Barrier, it is so hard to burst out a Soraka, unless you're just like obscenely fed. Because if she lands this Q, she's going to be healing herself for this large amount, and then she's going to Barrier, which is going to be an additional like multi-hundred heal. Effectively, it's going to be a shield, but then she can trigger Guardian if she just casts Wish. I believe. I'm not actually. You have to hit the Q. It like her Q is bugged to where, like if you land this Q on like a red minion, like in the jungle when there's like one of your allies is close to there, it'll put the Guardian on them. So there's something really bugged with like her Star Call and how it functions. But pretty much, if you just heal anybody else, if you're getting all end, then you're going to get the Guardian proc on yourself. So you have Guardian proc plus Barrier plus self healing off of Q plus your Wish doing some crazy amount of burst healing, and they're gonna have to burst you out, and you can drop a redemption on yourself. So they're gonna have to burst you out for like 2,500 damage in like 1 second or something like that, or 2 seconds to blow you up. So it's actually quite challenging to blow her up if you take Guardian. The reason that I like Guardian, so that's one reason that I like it over Aerie, for the same reason people have started doing Barrier for a long time now instead of things like Exhaust or Ignite on Soraka, is because if you stay alive, no one else is dying most of the time. Unless they burst someone else out for like 2,000 instantly, you're going to win pretty much every fight where you stay alive that's a team fight, because your contributions are just like through the roof. So that's one reason that I like Guardian. The thing about Aerie is, yes, it does give you more poke in the laning phase, but as we talked about earlier, the poke doesn't matter that much if your ADC is not going aggressive with you. You can poke them all day, but if you just go even in the lane, if both people just have a handshake agreement and just back at 50 CS to grab their BF sword, then it doesn't matter how much you poked them. If they go back with 1% health and your ADC backs at the exact same time, it doesn't matter. You didn't do anything. So unless you're pressuring them off of waves, you're getting a major CS advantage, or you're outright killing them or getting plates or doing something with that pressure, then the poke doesn't matter as much. So like, yes, having the Aerie early, having Scorch early, it's cool and everything, but if you're just occasionally hitting some Qs and landing an auto attack or two, and your Ashe is just standing behind you by like 300 and just auto attacking the minions, which is what happens all the time in like Platinum and lower, then you're just like wasting your time by taking Aerie. Now you might say, well, Aerie scales in the late game. That's true, but the thing is, like, you have to sync it up perfectly to get the heal value out of it, because auto attacking people with Aerie late game or hitting them with your Q really isn't going to matter like that much, because they nerfed the scaling on it a lot damage wise. So you're going to be doing like 10 extra damage maybe, and you've got some like mediocre scaling with the damage late game. So it's not really going to matter when you're hitting people that have like over 1,000 health. The extra 20 or 30 damage every 3 or 4 seconds is not going to matter in team fights that much. It's like a little bit, but not much. Obviously, what you want is the healing and shielding. Now, if you're shielding people for 80 extra, and that actually scales really well, it's got a 0.25 AP ratio, that's good. But the problem is you have to get the Aerie every time on a shield. So that means in this really busy team fight where all this crazy stuff's going off, if Aerie's about to come back to you, you have to stop autoing, stop throwing Qs, stop your DPS, and make sure you land a heal with the Aerie to get the shield. It can be done, but it's a lot of bookkeeping to keep up with in a huge team fight. What's typically going to happen in most team fights is you're just going to be busy running around, trying to heal people, watching your positioning, making sure you're not getting caught out and bursted, and you're just going to auto attack or Q somebody, and Aery's just going to do damage a lot of the time. Like, you might get lucky, and it does apply to a shield every now and then, but a lot of those Aery procs are going to be wasted in team fights as damage instead. So it's like, it does that extra poke in lane, but is it going to matter? Maybe in some matchups, maybe not. You do have mana flow ban, which is nice, but your mana costs are very low. Like we talked about, the Star Call is super low. There's not a lot of stuff you're going to be spamming outside of Star Call. You get a ton of Fairy Charms in the early game anyways, whether you're going Athenes or Mikhails or whatever. You're going to have a lot of mana regen early. Absolute Focus is okay. Like Transcendence is okay. Scorch is good for trading early, but once again, will it matter? However, if you go for Guardian, like, this is specifically, when someone's getting hit and when they're getting bursted, and it gives a way, way bigger shield than Aery. Also, it applies to 2 people. And fights are really fast, too, so you're really not going to trigger Aery much more than, like, maybe twice, maybe 3 times in a fight, right? Versus Guardian, you'd have to trigger Aery, because this is going to give you, in the mid-game, probably about 200 or so, maybe a little bit more, 200 total shield with a 0.5, because it gives it to you and someone else, and it has 12% of your bonus health, which you're not going to get a ton of bonus health, but that does add up a little bit. But yeah, so you're basically getting a 200 shield with some extra scaling, which is about 3 Aeries, right? So Aery in the mid game is going to give you probably like 55 or 60 shield. So you're going to have 3, maybe 4 shield Aery procs, not the damage ones, but the shield ones, in order to match the same contributions as Guardian in a team fight. Because it's shielding both you and the other person. And it can shield you. Aery can never shield you. So this is self-protection too. And it gives the movement speed, which is really nice for both you and somebody else to help you escape. So I just feel like Guardian is similar in defensive capabilities to Aery. I think it's way better in burst scenarios. Aery might be better if you use it perfectly in like long fights that are like 10 seconds or so. But I just think Guardian just works. It's just a lot easier to play around and optimize. Somebody's getting bursted, you heal them. Okay, great. You get good use out of that shield. Now, some of that shield might be wasted as well. Maybe no one ever touches you while Guardian's procced. That's totally possible. But I just think that's really nice. And then that allows you to take Font of Life as well, which isn't insane, but it's okay. It does allow you to spread around and Ardent Sensor buff a bit more. It does allow people to get extra healing. If you do get extra plus healing and shielding, or if you have Athenes, it will give a little bit of extra healing on Font. So Font's not amazing, it's not insane, but it's alright. You can take Demolish if you think you're going to have an aggressive lane. And this allows you to take more defensive stuff. You can take Conditioning to help save you later on, or you can take Bone Plating early, and then Revitalize. You pretty much have to have Revitalize on Soraka. It's just too OP not to have that, so you're always getting Revitalize. So a lot of times people will go for like the Aery build, and then they'll get like Revitalize plus Bone Plating or something like that, which is good. But I would argue that Guardian and Font are very similar to the effectiveness of Aery and Mana Flow Band. Because you really don't need Mana Flow Band either on Soraka, because you have so many Fairy Charms. So I think that Font is probably more useful than Mana Flow. But if you take Guardian, because you have to have Revitalize 100%, that frees you up to take a different secondary other than Sorcery. And I think Domination offers some really good additional options. So like Taste of Blood is great. This is awesome for extra healing in the lane. You landing your Qs is helpful, but you can also get the extra healing. If you think you're going to land a lot of Qs and you can go aggressive, you can actually take Cheap Shot too, because then if you land a Q and auto attack, you're getting Cheap Shot procs. Although I think most of the time I'd probably stick with Taste of Blood. You could also take Ghost Poro if you want to scale. This effectively gives you 30 AP, which we just saw the AP scaling on her is nuts with the Q combined with the W. So you can take that. Usually when I've tried Ghost Poro, you can get it fully stacked in about 15 minutes if you're warding correctly. And so it's basically 30 AP at 15 minutes, which is way more than Gathering Storm. Gathering Storm at 20 minutes is only 24 AP. So, you know, Ghost Poro is better than Gathering Storm, a lot better than Gathering Storm, until like 30 minutes into the game. You also get some extra vision, which doesn't always matter, because the Ghost Poro's vision's kind of bad. It's like half of a ward, but it could matter. It could be good. And then the real attraction is this stuff down here. So all of these are going to be pretty good on her if you want them. One that's really nice that a lot of people overlook is Ingenious Hunter. If you're going to go for a Mikhail's Redemption build, which is really common on her, if you're going against a lot of CC, it's really nice. And you get 45% cooldown reduction on, I think, right? 15% base and then 5% per 40% cooldown reduction on your items. More redemptions, more Mikhail's. That's really strong. I mean, those are basically very similar in power level to your actual ult. So it's like you get 2 extra free ults with a 40% cooldown. So that's really handy. That also affects your sweeper. It allows you to have better vision control. So that's okay. If you want to take like Athene's and you don't want to go double active in your first 2 items, then you could take Ulti Hunter, which is really strong. You stack this very quickly because you have a global ult. So you can influence fights around the map, and then having an extra 25% cooldown on something that's that powerful as your ult and also has a long cooldown, 160 seconds, is really strong. You can also take Relentless Hunter if you want for basically getting free Moby boots, additional Moby boots, which can be really strong as well. So I think all of these are really good. I mean, Ravenous Hunter I probably wouldn't get, but if you want more healing, I guess you could get it. But these 3 right here are super strong, and combined with the ability to get 30 AP at 15 minutes is very good, or extra healing. I think Domination is really underappreciated right now on a lot of supports, but especially someone like Soraka. So I recommend Guardian, Font of Life, choose what you need out of the Bone Plating tree, Revitalize, and then Taste of Blood, Ulti Hunter, although like we discussed, it's pretty modular. You can go Mercury Treads or Tabi. Mobility Boots are still pretty good too. And then Nomads, for the same reason with Rakan, I just really like Nomads. Gives you the movement to dodge Blitz hooks, Nautilus hooks, all that stuff. The 10 movement speed definitely matters. And then you get a lot of extra gold, and since you scale so insanely well with items, I would just rather have the gold and the guaranteed wards than the extra like poke that you can get off of Frostfang. But it depends on your elo, depends on how aggressive people are. Challengers are, you know, going to want Frostfang. Iron people definitely want Nomads. And I think, honestly, people under Diamond would probably want Nomads. And I think Athene's in most circumstances is really good. Just gives you extra aggression. Although you can take Mikhail's there if you want to. And then just Redemption and either Ardent Censer or whichever Chalice item you didn't get. So you could go Athene's, Redemption, Mikhail's if you wanted to. Okay. Let's talk about the rest. So it's going to be a bit of a longer video here. But those are just like some changes, I think. I just wanted to explain Rakan again from a different light from some of the doubters out there. And then Soraka with this build, because I get asked about this a lot. You know, why Guardian? Why this other stuff? So I think this is kind of what I've come to that I think is really strong right now. And then we'll go through the rest. So we'll see for like maybe an hour and 10 minutes here. We won't go too much further than that. But Nautilus, there's not a lot to say about him. He did get nerfed on this patch. I mean, everybody's pretty familiar with why he's really good. I mean, he's just a CC machine. You know? So obviously, he has 4 different forms of CC. Everything but his shield, even his passive, gives some sort of CC. The things that I will mention about Nautilus that a lot of people overlook, especially people who are assessing this, is that he has really good wave clear as a support, which is really undervalued. Soraka does as well. So yeah, you don't want to kill minions yourself, but oftentimes it is really important that you can push so that you can get priority and go do other things. So that means that, you know, you can push and go contest Scuttles. If you notice that their jungler is top lane, you can push and go contest Dragon. You know, if you just want a better back timing, just so that you get back to lane, you know, 20 seconds faster so that you can maybe take a look mid lane, see if you get a gank or at least get some deep wards around, you know, their jungle. Having that extra back timing, if you're the first person to back and they have to sit there and clear, that's going to give you 10 to 20 extra seconds, which is very valuable, like I said, for a roam or just for warding. So having good wave clear is nice. He also puts up pretty high, like, team fight damage numbers. So if he's left alone, you know, 5-second cooldown on this, dealing up to 350 damage AoE to everybody around. Now, it's not always going to deal that much, but it can do a lot. It's usually going to hit them with at least 2 waves. So you're looking at probably 250 damage all the way up to 350. In fights is massive, and it's AoE slow. So it's just really, really strong in team fights. He does a lot of damage, a lot more than most other tanks in team fights. Now, early on, his burst is not going to be as high as something like Blitzcrank or even like Leona, but in those kind of mid to late game team fights, his Riptide is actually definitely respectable in terms of the damage that it puts out and the wave clear capabilities of it. Now his defensive steroid is pretty weak compared to other champs. So like Leona specifically is going to have a way better W, but it's okay. And then he has mobility with his hook, so he can get around the map faster than a lot of other champs because he can hook towers or hook terrain to get out. He can't hook over walls to catch people out. So that's kind of a problem when you're trying to look for picks in the mid game. You're sort of sitting around that mid river bush trying to grab somebody over one of those walls. You can't do it with Nautilus like you can with Leona, Thresh, Pike, Blitzcrank. But you do get a little bit more safety in exchange for that. And one thing that's really underestimated is just how much and how effective the depth charge CC is. This is huge, and I've been talking about this for years. But it is a knock-up for 1 second. Why is that important? Well, first of all, Yasuo is really popular, and it's good for Yasuo. But second of all, knock-ups do not get reduced by tenacity. So that means it's always 1 second no matter what. So just a flat 1 second, and then the stun duration when people land does get reduced. But it's still going to be very effective. And because he has so many different pieces of little CC, so he's got the dredge line CC, the staggering blow CC, a lot of this stuff can't be reduced significantly by tenacity either. So like this, 1.25 seconds here, even if they have 50% tenacity, because you have so many different kinds of CC, it's just you're still going to lock them up. Even if they get a McHale's or something, you're still probably going to be able to lock them up because you have so much. And this hits everybody in a team fight. So it's got 825 range. If you just ult the back line, you ult the ADC, it's going to knock up everyone in front as well. So usually you can knock up 2 or 3 different people. This is very different from something like a Leona ult, where typically you're only going to get that stun on one person, maybe 2, maybe 3 in extreme circumstances. But it's a lot harder to get that multi-person stun. And it's 2.5 seconds. Stun on both the primary target and all of the secondaries. So it's just a crazy amount of CC. It's really strong. The hook is super easy to hit too. There's no wind up for it. It's got a massive hitbox. So it's like the second best hook next to Blitz's, I think. So that's really strong. Now they did nerf 50 damage off of his ult, which is significant, especially if you're against like a Janna or a Soraka. If you don't have enough burst and you already use your ult, they can turn the fight around on you. But I think all of that just makes him really strong. He's just kind of the CC king. He has really good wave clear and really good AoE teamfight damage. And his ult's on a pretty low cooldown, 120 seconds. They've buffed him a lot this season. So I still think he's going to be quite strong. And his base stats are pretty good too. Like he's got the 39 armor, the 576 health. So he's pretty solid. So yeah, Nautilus is going to be very good right now. I just think the standard Demolish, Aftershock, Bone Plating, Unflinching. Now, one thing I like to do is Presence of Mind, Tenacity. Similar to Rakan, it's just going to give you more opportunities to make plays with your ults off of Presence. It allows you to break through the CDR cap. Tanks in general have a hard time getting CDR because Targon's Brace doesn't have 10% on it, like Frostfang and Nomads do. So usually the supports are going to be down either 950 gold to complete the 4th item, or they're going to be down 10% CDR. So Presence of Mind helps mitigate that a little bit. Then having Unflinching and Legend just means you're not going to be able to get CC'd that much in fights, so it's going to allow you to walk around and land more auto attacks to get your passive off on people and to keep people in range for your E. When you have the slow off of Zeke's, it keeps them in range for that. So I think this having that tenacity is pretty useful. And a lot of people will take like Hex Flash and then like Biscuits or something on him. That's probably better at Challenger, but I just think that a lot of people, Platinum and lower, they're just not going to use Hex Flash super efficiently. So I would probably just go with Presence. It just works. You don't have to do anything extra. You just get more ults and win the game. But if you're, really experienced with Nautilus or you're in a higher elo bracket, then Hex Flash might be better. So I'll just go Moby Boots, Equinox, Zeke's, Knight's Vow, Locket. Not a lot of wiggle room there. I've toyed around with getting Ardent later on if you get Font of Life. It's a cute build. You do have okay AP ratios. You can apply Font to multiple people AoE with your E, which means you can give everyone on your team the Ardent Sensor proc really easily. But I think it just makes you too squishy. I mean, maybe if they don't have a lot of damage, you're just steamrolling the game hard, you can go Ardent, but most of the time you probably just want to go more tanky items. Okay. So that's Nautilus. Everybody's familiar with him. He's super popular. He's super good. Just hit the highlights there. Okay, Leona. Leona's going to be pretty strong too. Now, with Nautilus getting nerfed, Leona's probably going to get a little bit more real estate. So, Leona's very risky though. Like, that's why I've kind of moved away from Leona. If your team falls behind, she just really doesn't have a lot of, like, plan B. Because she has to go all the way in. Like, whenever she lands her Zenith Blade, she's going all the way over to them. And so, that's really putting you in a very vulnerable position if your team doesn't follow up, or if you miscalculate your engage. So, when you're playing Blitzcrank or whatever, you can hook somebody, and it's almost always a good call if you hook at, most champions, with the exception of, like, Alistar, or maybe some of the tanks, some of the other tanks. But, in general, like, it's just, you land a hook, it's good, because you're pulling them so far out of position, and you're doing so much burst damage off of the Blitz hook plus your ult that it's just good. So you don't have to think as carefully about your engages, and you don't have to worry about your team falling up because you're just putting it right in front of them. But with Leona, if you go in with Zenith and people don't coordinate properly with you, they might just blow you up. Or you might make a bad call and, say, hey, this support looks really vulnerable while they're warning. I'm going to go ahead and engage on them over a wall with Zenith or something. And then it turns out the enemy's jungler is there too, supporting the support. And you're like, well, crap, I guess I'm dead because my ADC is not going to come over this wall with me. And maybe the ADC is not even paying attention. They're sitting there, on their whatever music they're listening to, just like change it. They're tabbed out. Whatever goes on in some of these games, I have no clue. But the ADCs definitely do not have reaction times a lot of time. No offense to a lot of ADCs out there. We've seen some rough stuff. Whenever I try to play Leona or Nautilus, people just, like, I don't know, maybe they have like 500 ping, I have no clue. But people just don't follow up on stuff. Sorry, I maybe could have muted that, but I am still a little sick with a cold. But I'm trying to bring you guys the content. But anyways, Leona is kind of the worst offender because she's the only one that has to go 100% there. Nautilus meets him halfway. Pyke pulls him, about halfway there. Blitz pulls him all the way to you. So she's going to be one of the only ones that goes all the way in. So that part's super dangerous. It's also a pretty slender hitbox. You have to practice it a lot. It's a lot harder to land than most other hooks. It's shorter range. And it's just slender. Now, the advantage, though, is that you can go through a minion wave with everything. So you can Zenith Blade. You're always a threat if you're standing up like near the minions and you're in a winning lane position. You're always a threat. So they can't hide behind minions. You can get them with Solar Flare and your Zenith Blade through the wave. So that's really sweet. However, your wave positioning, because you go all the way in, you also have to keep them in the middle of the lane, which means you don't want to be pushing. Which means it's really hard to take plates with her. So it just kind of limits what your team wants to do. So if you have like a Tristana on your team, or a Draven, or a Sivir, or even a Caitlyn, like these other champions that want to be pushing, which is a lot of them right now, is I think that perma pushing plus roaming is one of the best metas right now for bot lane, as long as you don't die to ganks. So she's got the roaming part down, but the push part is rough because that means you're not going to ever really be able to engage and threaten people. So, she can be really good. She does have a high win rate. She does have a lot of burst damage, especially early game. You land that Zenith, auto attack, reset with Shield of Daybreak, and if they even get one or two of these Sunlight procs, the other person's probably dead. And she has a really low cooldown ult, 90 seconds base, which is huge. And 1200 range, which is a massive engage range. And once again, it goes through everything. It goes through minions, goes through other champions that might be trying to block it, whatever. So Zenith Blade. Zenith also goes through champions. So if their, support tank is in front of them, their Nautilus, you can still get to that ADC. Just ignore the Nautilus and just run through them. So she's got a lot of benefits. She's great early. If you snowball, she's one of the most hardcore snowball champs because there's nowhere to hide. She's going to engage on you. She's going to kill you. If she gets a couple of tank items, she can tank towers easily with her Eclipse. This buff they gave to her to where she reduces chip damage, so auto attack, Scorch, Airy, Conqueror procs, all of this stuff is just going to do virtually no damage to her. Zyra plants, not going to do a lot of damage to her. So she is very strong. She's just very vulnerable. So if you, and you know, early aggressive ADCs are coming back though. You know, we're seeing, like we saw here, win rate wise, we're seeing Misfortune coming back. We're seeing Jin coming back. Draven's coming back. Even Ashe to an extent can be pretty aggressive. Caitlyn, if she actually sets her traps down, can be aggressive. So, you know, win rate wise, we're seeing less Kaisas and Ezreals. Although pick rate wise, once again, a lot of people haven't figured that out. But anyways, I think she can be good. So she's riskier. She deserves to be tier 1. I just think that a few of the less risky champions deserve to be a little bit higher than her. But if you get ahead, she can definitely be the most impressive out there. So I would just go with the Aftershock, Demolish, Bone Plating, Unflinching, and then I still like the Presence of Mind, Legend Tenacity. If you're really good with that Hex Flash, you know, flash away. But in general, I would probably rather just go for the guaranteed cooldown off of Presence. And then the Tenacity, kind of like Nautilus, I just want to be able to walk around and stun priority targets with Daybreak and not get CC'd to death. But that's up to you. Okay, let's go to the next one here real quick. I'm just going to blow my nose real quick. Sorry, I'll try to spare you guys that noise there. And then finally, I have Blitzcrank. Now, this might seem crazy to a lot of people why Blitz is not number 1, but... And if you're really good on him, he definitely can be. But I just think that he is so one-dimensional, and I just don't like one-dimensional champions because if you can't do whatever their plan A is, they don't really have a plan B. So he just, like, has to hook people. If you're far ahead, you may not be able to get a good hook target. He does do a lot of burst damage. He did get nerfed a little bit in terms of damage on this patch. So that's definitely worth considering. But... you know, if you're just missing your hook, or if they have dodges, or if they pick something like Morgana, Tom Kench is not as popular, or if they have something that you really don't want to hook or that could be problematic to hook, if they have a Leona or a Nautilus, which are both very popular right now, and you hook them over to your team, and they're ahead, they have some tank items, you might have just killed your AD carry, because if you hook the Leona over there, yeah, you do your rotation of damage to her. It's like, okay, she takes your hit, she still has like 50% health left, and then she, like, hard engages on your ADC, you know, hooks them with her E and, like, chain CCs them and ignites them. She might just kill your ADC. So if you hook the tank, and then in turn they open up and do all of their stuff on your ADC, you don't have anything left. And that's another thing, is he doesn't have any sort of, or he doesn't have much in the way of peel or protection. So if they have a really fed Zed or something like that, a 5-0 Zed coming out of laning phase, and he's just running at your ADC, you're like, well, I guess he's dead. Pretty much, as Blitzcrank. Like, unless you hit a miracle hook on him, and they're going to dodge it, they're going to flash it, or use Zed's ult, or, you know, whatever, a lot of the time. And that can be, it feels bad. Versus if you were Rakan, Rakan can actually protect a little bit, you know, with his shield, Guardian, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that can be a problem. So, yes, he's got like a, you know, S+ or whatever people say. Definitely top rank offense. If things are going his way, if he lands his hook and he's, you know, ahead, you know, yes, he's the most dangerous. He's the scariest support out there. But if he's missing his hooks, or if he's behind, or if the enemy has a lot of tanks that you don't want to hook, then he's not going to be as strong. So it's just, he's just a lot more volatile. I've still got him tier 1. I would just rather have something that's either more consistent, that's not fully reliant on hitting one single skill shot, and that has a better plan B. So like Nautilus, you know, if you miss your hook, you still have your ult, you still have your wave clear off of your E, you still have other stuff you can do. Leona, you miss your E, okay, you still have your Q, you know, on a low cooldown, you still have your ult, you still have a lot of stuff you can do. Blitzcrank is like, if you miss your hook, you're pretty much worthless. So that's, you know, why on Blitz. Now, I think that just Aftershock, Demolish, Bone Plating, Unflinching is good. And with this one, you definitely want Hex Flash Cosmic because his ult is already on a low cooldown. So, like, Presence of Mind doesn't give you as much. You know, Blitz is just an all-in burst. That's it. Reset. You know, wait 60 seconds, do it again. So I would definitely go Hex Flash just to get those better hook angles. And he has the most powerful hook, so it's worth taking the risk on Hex Flash. Some mobility boots. Nomad's Medallion. I've been seeing a lot of Righteous Glory on him. I think that's actually a really good idea. It does give you more tankiness and allows you to just run up. It gives you more versatility. So you can run up and get that slow and then wait on them to flash. And then after they flash, then you can hook. So I really like the Righteous Glory build. If you want to do like more damage, I think like a GOP build could be okay. Potentially, because then you get your slow in and then you can land your hook. Sometimes people will take stuff like Zeke's as well, but it's like if you land your hook, they're gonna die most of the time, right? So you don't need the extra damage off of Zeke's. Like, he's not a champion that's meant to have like sustained team fights. It's just like hook them and they're dead or not. So I would probably rather just do something like Righteous Glory or something like GLP, which gives you mana, CDR, AP. He has a great AP ratio. Like, this has 100%, and then his hook has 100%. So he like surprisingly has a lot of his damage does have a really high AP ratio. But yeah, I think Righteous is definitely the more common build. Okay, and then the last few champs here, and then we really got to wrap this up, so I don't want this to be too long. But Janna, I think, is definitely becoming a lot stronger. She has really nice disengage with her ult, which is really handy against these engaged champions. So if somebody, you know, if Nautilus or Leona specifically tries to hook your ADC, you can get a Mikhail's early, and then off of that, off of the Mikhail's, then you can use your ult to push them back and just kind of reset the fight. So she does have the Tornado also to help against some of those engaged champs, particularly Leona and Nautilus. You know, that can stop your hook. You just have to be really, really fast with the Tornado these days because it moves a lot slower than it used to. So the Leona matchup, I've tried picking her into Leona, and it still is way harder because a lot of times, even if you interrupt her with Howling Gale, she still gets close enough with her Q to get the stun off. So that can be kind of tricky. And then your ult, you know, it takes time. First of all, it's on a long cooldown, 150 seconds, but it takes time for this healing to go off, so it's not instantaneous. You have to charge it over 3 seconds. You can be interrupted. People all the time run out of your ult and don't get the heal. They don't know what's going on for the first, you know, second and a half of the ults. They don't stand in it. So that can be really frustrating compared to something like Soraka's, which once again just works. You just press it and boom, everybody gets a heal. So Soraka's heal, if they're under 40%, is going to be much bigger and it's instant, although it does not push people back. So if you use the Monsoon well, you can actually, you know, get a lot of peel there, and that can be better than a flat-out Soraka heal. So if you can push, you know, the major tank that's like on your ADC trying to kill him, if you can push him away, you know, maybe that's enough. It's just a little bit more conditional. More stuff can go wrong, but in the best case scenarios, it can actually be stronger than Soraka's ult. It obviously doesn't have the global roaming impact as well, but that can be really good in a pinch. Now, she's going to be a lot better against things like Zac, who's becoming very popular, because you can knock Zac out of the air with Howling Gale, or you can knock him out of the air with Monsoon. So anything that's trying to hard engage like that, like your Zacs, your Jarvans, your Leonas, like Rakan, all that kind of stuff, then her peel is what really separates her from Soraka. So Soraka's going to have much more just like flat out just impact in a team fight in terms of raw stats, but Janna's going to have a lot more peel to stop people from one-shotting whoever their priority targets are. She's also really fast. So like with her W and her passive, she can zip around the map pretty quickly. So that means that she does have opportunities to roam. It seems kind of weird. It's like, okay, this Enchanter. But I mean, if she rolls up to like mid lane and drops a Zephyr and a shield on somebody, a lot of times that's enough to turn the fight. Zephyr does a decent amount of damage, does 195. Now that is plus 35% of your bonus movement speed at level 10. So it's total movement speed, not just bonus movement speed, I think, right? I think that's of your total movement speed. So if you have like 400 movement speed, that's a lot, right? You know, it's going to be an extra 120 damage. So yeah, this can do like up to 300 damage. It also has an AP ratio. So it can hit. You know, once you get those Moby boots, that Zephyr can definitely do some damage. So I think that she does have decent roams. her poke and lane, especially like if you don't engage on her, if you're someone who misses a hook with like a Blitzcrank or something, she can come back and throw down some damage, especially if you take comment on her, which a lot of people are doing for the poke. Because this is a slow, which is pretty much a guaranteed comment hit. You walk up, you land that Zephyr, and just auto attack them, and it's going to do quite a bit with the Comet plus Zephyr. So she does a shocking amount of damage in the laning phase that people just aren't used to a lot of times. Because in the past she's taken Aerie, but for the reasons I described, I think Aerie's fallen out of favor on a lot of different enchanters for different reasons. But she scales super well. I mean, she's got a 220 shield with a 0.7. Now, it is kind of on a longer cooldown with the 0.7, but if you hit people with with your abilities, then it does lower the cooldown significantly, which is pretty nice. And the big one that a lot of people don't calculate is it gives a lot of bonus AD. So if you have 100 AP, it's giving out 50 extra bonus AD to your AD carry, which is huge on crit champions especially. So if you have like a Jhin or like a Jinx or just someone who's going to build a lot of crit, this is really good because obviously if they have 50% chance to crit, you know, that 50 damage effectively becomes 75 extra damage on hit. So the shield really gets underestimated, kind of like the Soraka Q plus W adding up a lot. The shield adds up a lot with crit because this basically prevents 220 damage with a ratio. And if your AD carry lands even like 3 auto attacks while the shield is up, it's going to be doing an extra like 150 to 300 damage depending on how many crits they have and all that stuff. So it's like 200 plus damage and typically like 200 plus shield is a lot on one ability. So she has a lot of appeal. She can be oppressive in the laning phase in certain matchups if you're able to land your W's and not get hooked. And she scales pretty well later on in the game. So I think that Comet, Mana Flow, Transcendence, Scorch is really strong. You have some options as secondaries. You can go for a kind of a standard Revitalize into either Bone Plating or Conditioning if you want something defensive. Or if you want something aggressive, you can go Cheap Shot, Relentless Hunter. The Cheap Shot, because you already apply your slow, so once again, if you Zephyr auto, it's going to do that extra Cheap Shot damage, which adds up a lot in the laning phase. Or you can just go for Taste of Blood for just healing on your trades. Or you can go for Ghost Poro if you want that extra 30 AP by 15 minutes, which is just usually a better Gathering Storm. Or you can go Relentless Hunter as well in there, which is going to give you more movement speed to zip around the map, but also will give you a lot more damage on your Zephyr. So it's kind of a double bonus there. Then you just always want to go mobility because of how your passive works. And then Nomads, I like. If you want to go for the hyper aggression, you can go for Frostfang. She can put up the numbers, especially if you go Cheap Shot, Scorch, Comet. That's a lot of proc damage. So, you know, maybe Frostfang on her if you think you're going to be able to go aggressive and win the lane. So if you're against like Ezreal plus Nautilus or something and you have like Draven, Janna, or like Jhin, Janna or something like that, you can probably put out a lot of poke because Nautilus is not going to be able to engage through the minion wave, but you can definitely poke him through the minion wave. You just have to be really careful with Leona, but a lot of the other hard engaged champs you can get away from. And because you have such awesome movement speed with your mobility boots and your Relentless Hunter and all that, you know, if you're playing your cards right, you can probably dodge most hooks with her because she's really fast. Okay, so yeah, Janna's pretty good. I haven't had a super high win rate on her lately, but she's got a really high win rate overall. I probably just need more practice on her. And then finally, last couple of champs here. Nami can be good. She trades really well with her W in the laning phase, which is good. You can harass through the minion wave. She doesn't scale quite as well as Soraka, as Janna. Over time, she just doesn't have the same AP ratios and numbers. She has long cooldowns. She only has one heal, which is her W. But she does bring a lot of CC to the table. So if you do land your bubble or you land your ult, she has a lot more kill threat. Just flat out, like you bubble them and they're dead. Kill threat in the laning phase than Soraka or Janna does. So that can be really good if you pair it with something like a Jhin, or if you pair it with like a smart Caitlyn who actually uses her traps, or just a lot of different champs out there. Jinx if she drops her chompers, Draven obviously. So she's got a lot of good matchups if you have a competent ADC that's going to throw up some damage. She just doesn't scale as well. Sona has kind of fallen out of favor. I just very highly favor Soraka now over Sona. That's the inverse of what it was like a year ago. I just think that Sona has been nerfed several times this season because of the Sona Taric bot lane. She still scales really well, but she doesn't have as much protection as Soraka does because Soraka can take barriers, she can take Guardian a bit more comfortably, and she can heal herself like with a huge burst heal off of her R, and her Q heals herself for quite a lot. So I think she has a lot more self-healing and self-defense with her typical like rune, summoner, and just her skills. But she's good. I mean, she puts out a lot of offense. She can put, Ardent Sensor on a lot of people. I mean, Soraka can do that too with her heals and her ult, but she's still good. I just think that Soraka outshines her. Now, one thing about Sona, though, is her harass is pretty much guaranteed. Like, your Q can't miss, and your auto attack, empowered autos are nice harassment. Versus with Soraka, you got to hit your Qs. So I think Sona's all right. I think that Soraka outclasses her pretty much everywhere. You can move around the map faster with your E for you and your allies, so that's, worth mentioning for the rotations, but I still would rather have Soraka. So Zyra is pretty good as well. The problem is right now that she is vulnerable to hook champions. You can put up plants to block the hooks, but realistically, a lot of people aren't going to do that often, and with the buff to Leona, she just cuts right through all those plants and the minions, and if she ever hits you with an E, you're like basically 100% dead. And, like I was mentioning with the other champs, you can put out a lot of harassment with your Q, but if your ADC doesn't step up and help you out, like with the harassment, then it's just not going to matter. You do have all-in threat too if you land your E, but it is hard to land E's on a lot of modern ADCs. The Ezreal's going to be able to blink out of it, Lucian's going to dash out of it, Kai'Sa's going to be able to E and probably dodge it. Just so many popular champs have dashes. So it's still going to be good against like a Jinx or a maybe a Caitlyn or something like that doesn't have a lot of mobility, but it's just hard out there to get a kill, and if you get camped, you're going to die. That's true with a lot of these immobile champs bot, but you can also just get out scaled by Soraka or Janna, if they get a couple of plus healing and shielding items versus your damage items, even if you have Morello. It's rough. Zyra also does not roam very well, so if you get caught out in the river by the enemy jungler or the enemy support just like collapses on you and sandwiches you, she's just really not that great outside of the laning phase. Now, you can get vision control and still make plays from like pushes in the mid game, but when you're just sitting there staring down the enemy, it's tough because you're not going to scale as hard as the enchanter, but you also don't have the engaged potential of the engaged supports. So you're just kind of in this weird middle ground where like you're a healer support, but you don't scale as well as other ones. Also, your items are very expensive, so if you don't get ahead early, you're having to pay like 3,000 gold for a lot of your items, Morellonomicon, the Leandries, that type of stuff, versus the enchanters are only paying 2,100. And they can take things like coin, which is like guaranteed money. You have to take Frostfang most of the time. So she's okay. She does a lot of burst damage. You can get some kills. Definitely consider playing her in like a Jhin or a Draven lane, especially if you do a little research on the ADC and you're like, okay, this guy's pretty good. We can probably get a win. That can be solid, but I just think she's a lot riskier than she has been in the past. And I think that's probably about all I'm going to have time for. Bard can be good if you're really good with Bard. If you roam around, you make really good rotations. The problem is his auto attack range is so short at 500 that it's just so risky to step up against some of these hard engaged champions, and you're just going to get outscaled by things like the Soraka or the Janna. So he can be really good. He does put up a lot of burst damage, so if you can safely get those autos in, you have, a Draven, a Jhin, a Misfortune, something like that on your team, he can be really strong if you have a lot of experience on him, but he's just kind of weird. His itemization's not great. His runes aren't great. I did try him out for a few days a couple of weeks ago, and I was doing all right on him, but yeah, I just think he's a little too conditional, although he can be strong. And the final crew here, Morgana is a good counter pick into hard engage, especially Nautilus and Leona, because they don't have a lot of damage early to break that shield. So the black shield is really strong. Your bind with your Q is obviously really strong, the 3 seconds. The problem is your W is pretty much worthless, and your ult is very conditional. You have to be super close, which is really dangerous. You can kind of use it as peel, but it's kind of unreliable too. There's a lot of counterplay from enemies. So she basically has like 2.5 abilities. So, and her passive is just kind of whatever. It heals you a little bit. It's not super useful. So she's okay. The problem is like, I don't know. Like I said, I would pick her only as a counter pick if they show you Nautilus or Leona. If they pick something that can get him a Kales it's going to be really bad. So if they pick like a Soraka or a Janna, and they just get a Mikhail's, and they can cleanse off your Q, you're down to 1.5 abilities, and they're just going to outscale you tremendously. So, you can pick her as a counter. She's okay, but maybe it's just me. But I just think that there probably are better champs out there. Okay, Yuumi can still be good. I've seen Yuumi be very strong in a lot of matchups. Her win rate is abysmal, though. So it's like some Yuumis are good, but most Yuumis are not good. I mean, that's really, really low. I mean, sometimes win rates like don't tell the whole story. I think Rakan might be under 50. I mean, he's at about 50. But once you start getting like real deep, Pyke is way lower. We'll talk about Pyke here in just a second. But yeah, once you start getting down into like the 42 range, I mean, there's something just like really wrong with that champion in solo queue. So they've just nerfed her so many times. But her heal is still pretty good. Her burst healing is great. And her ultimate is still really strong for like team AoE stuff. So that's all right. Her Q's been nerfed a lot, but it's okay. So it's mostly like what makes her efficient is burst healing and the movement speed. So it's just like impossible to get away from her when she has that maxed out. And then the ult as well being on a fairly low cooldown with presence of mind. So if you do have one of these kind of like hyper fed like a Garen or a Renekton or Darius or just someone else that's balanced around having a fairly slow movement speed, and you give them super speed with Yuumi and burst healing and CC, she can be really good. So she can play around other champs. It's just she's very vulnerable. If your ADC dies or whoever you're on dies, you're dying too most of the time. She can't roam very well. It's very difficult to ward with her. So unless she just requires a lot of coordination. And I mean, I know a lot of supports do, but she does more than almost anybody else. Your team just has to have a pulse. They can't YOLO. They have to help you like when you're trying to ward. And that's just a tough ask from a lot of people. So she can be really good in the right circumstances. But I think for most people, she's in the top 15. But for most people, I think it's still going to be rough. Pyke's still kind of the same old champion, but he's a lot more vulnerable to poke. The healing does add up quite a bit. You've pretty much got one chance in a fight. After you take some hits, you're going to die. You can't just go back out, heal up, and run back in. So he's still all right. If you snowball, he's got a lot of offense, kind of like Blitzcrank, but has virtually no defense. He is very safe, though. He's a lot safer than Blitz. So he does have kind of personal safety defense, but he can't help other people that much. So he's all right. He does get a lot of gold. He's probably the best snowballing support, right there with Blitzcrank. But I think he is kind of vulnerable. Thresh is still good. He is what he is, right? He gets outscaled by enchanters. His engage is a lot more conditional than Nautilus or Leona. But if you play him like a master, he can be great. He is the perfect blend of offense and defense. So he doesn't have the most offense in the book or the most defense, but he's pretty dang good at both of them. So he's kind of above average at both of those. But, kind of like Yuumi, he does require a lot of coordination. Your team has to follow up when you go in. Your team has to actually click the lantern and stuff like that. So he's going to be a lot higher or a lot better at higher elo brackets. His damage, past like level 5 is pretty limited. His all in at level 2 is pretty good. But past that, his damage is going to be a little limited. His items aren't great. Usually he just takes Redemption and like Locket, which is okay, but not amazing on him. And runes also aren't amazing. It's like he takes Aftershock. It's all right. But he's okay. He's just super versatile. If you're really, really good on him, he can totally take over the game. But you're working uphill. You're going to have to like really outplay the Leona and the Nautilus to get the same level of effect. So that's why he's down here. So if you are that good, you can win with him. But if you put the same effort in, if you're that talented on like Nautilus or Leona, who are very similar, you'll probably be a higher rank. It's because you don't have to outplay people as much. But he is very fun too. So take that into account. And then Lux, finally. I still think she's okay. Her win rate's not amazing, but she does have okay poke. Her bind still lasts a long time. She's got her AoE shield. So she's okay. I think she's all right. I mean, if you really like her, you can definitely make her work. She does have good matchups into some of the champs out there. So if you do want like an enchanter who does have a nice engage but also scales pretty well, you don't want to play Rakan, you want something ranged, then she's a decent one, who has engage plus scaling. I think she's got more scaling than Morgana. Although, she doesn't have the black shield and her Q doesn't last as long as Morgana's Q. So she's all right. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Sorry, it's a super long one. I just wanted to spend some time talking about Senna a little bit because I know everyone's going to ask about her. And then I wanted to explain Rakan and Soraka from like maybe a different angle that maybe people haven't thought of as much before. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Be sure to check out the stream 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every night. We'd love to have you. Super friendly community. Check out the rest of the offerings on the channel as well. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day.